hopefully you too. So this is Algebra 2. We're working on our practice test. It's practice test 15A, and we're on number 5. And this says graph the square root function and its inverse. Determine the domain and range of both functions. So the square root function, really you could just plug some points in. Maybe that would be the, I don't want to give you the long explanation. I'll give you the short explanation. Just plug some points in. Okay, and then the inverse, you're just going to reverse the points. So what's a nice point to plug in for x? Because we don't want to mess with any decimals or anything. 2. 2, yeah, because if I put 2 in for x, I'll get a 0 under there. So 2, that'll give me 2 comma 0. And then maybe 1 or 2 more points. 1. Yeah, because 1, okay, now 1 actually isn't going to work because
that'll be square root.
1 minus 2, well, that'll give me -1, and that's not a real number, that's a complex number. So we're not going to, so we actually can't use numbers that are less than 2, because it'll make there be a negative.
So 4?
4 minus 2 will give me square root 2, and that's a yucky decimal. So how about, what if we pick 6? Because if you go 6 minus 2, you're going to get a 4, aren't you?
Yeah.
4, and square root 4 is 2. So 6 comma 2, and let's let, that's enough. I think, well, let's see if that looks like enough. I already know, and I think you guys are supposed to know, that this shape is going to look kind of like, it's going to kind of go like this. You guys are kind of, I think you're supposed to know that, the general shape. And because it has a -2, it means it got moved to the right by 2. So I actually already know that it's going to be kind of over here somewhere, but we'll use our points that we got. We got 2 comma 0, so that's right where I thought it would be. And then we got 6 comma 2. Okay, and so if you don't recognize, if you don't know that it's just going to go out like that, you might want to plug in maybe one more point. But I'm going to just say, I'm going to call it good. Okay, so that's the graph of y equals square root x minus 2. Y equals root x minus 2. Now, how can I graph the inverse? It's not very hard because inverses, you can just swap the x and y values. So I can go 0 comma 2. 0 comma 2, you probably can't tell the difference, but this is going to be in blue pen when I do this. 0 comma 2 is right here. And 2 comma 6 is here. And then I also want to use the knowledge, I hope I've said this to you guys before. This line, this diagonal line y equals x, that's a reflection. When things are inverses of each other, they make a mirror reflection across the line y equals x. So now that I have those 2 points, I don't want to see anybody just thinking that's a line and drawing a line. It's going to have the same curve as this one did. So it's just going to curve. It's supposed to look like this one looked at itself in the mirror over here. Or in other words, I could fold the paper and they would have symmetry. Okay, and I think that's is that all they want? Graph this. Oh, the domain and range. So this blue one, I don't know if you can even tell it's blue. This is the inverse. So I'm just going to write inverse on it. The inverse, we'd have to swap the x and the y's, and then we'd have to solve it back for y again. But it didn't ask you for the equation, so the domain. So I'm going to say domain of y equals x minus 2 is, and I'll say the range is, and I'll say domain of inverse. Can you even read that? No, you can't. Domain of inverse is, so here's all my, where I'm going to put all my answers. Okay, domain. So remember when we were picking numbers to stick inside this function, and I said let's not use 1 because 1 makes there be a negative under the root. So the domain of the original function, you don't want to pick any x's that are less than 2. So you kind of want to say something like x is greater than or equal to 2. I think that's okay. So I'm going to box that in as my answer for the domain. And the range, I know this sounds a little crazy because it doesn't look like it will, but this is ever so slightly going to head upward as it goes out and out to infinity. It's always going to keep getting a little higher, very, very slowly. So its range is actually going to continue upward, but it's never going to go down. So the range is going to be y is in between 0 and infinity. Can I say that? Does that look weird to say that? Let me see how the book says it. Number 5. Yeah, they just say y is greater than 0. So I'll go, or you could just say y is greater than or equal to 0, because that implies that it will go off into infinity. Because you can't actually have something equal to infinity. So there's the range. And then the domain of the inverse, this blue one up here is the inverse. So the domain is all the x values. So I did not want to plug in any negative numbers, did I? So the domain of the inverse is going to be positive numbers. So how can I write that? I guess I can go x is greater than or equal to 0. The domain of the inverse is the positive numbers. And then the range of the inverse would be from 2 up to infinity. Right? So when you look for range, you're looking at the y values. So you can say y is greater than or equal to 2. Like that. So now we have all our answers. Is that okay? Is there any questions on the graph? So this is going to go up on YouTube at some point in case you missed part of it.